I have discomforting news.
This is a vile accusation.
Were there any WTF moments in the premiere of House of the Dragon? Well, this is a show set within the universe of Game of Thrones, which is easily one of the most violent and sensual experiences you're ever going to have on television. So yeah, it had its brutality. It also didn't hurt that this show is very much about a ruling class of people who have dragons at their beck and call. So, when you combine that with people who aren't afraid to go full tilt, you're going to have moments that people are talking about throughout the show. We can show you a few of them, but be warned, these aren't for the faint of heart. Chop it off. We all knew before House of the Dragon began that Matt Smith's Prince Daemon was going to make an impact. And boy did he. In the first episode, it's revealed that the king's younger brother was put in charge of the City Watch in King's Landing, otherwise known as the Gold Cloaks. In a show of power in the poor areas of the city, Daemon has his men round up a mob of criminals before chopping off the hands of thieves, the penis of a rapist, and the heads of murderers. The Game of Thrones universe is known for being gory, but we don't think we'll ever get accustomed to seeing a cart filled with bloody body parts being wheeled away. Obviously, one of those removals is going to elicit memories of Theon Greyjoy, who infamously had his private parts chopped off at the hands of Ramsay Bolton. Why? Well, Ramsay was a monster, that's why. And he knew this would help turn Theon into someone he could control. The irony of which was that in a key fight to rally other Greyjoy followers, not having that key part helped him win. So, it all worked out in the end. Regardless, that was a killer way to showcase the brutality we'll see in the series. The tournament. In the premiere of the season, a tournament is held in the King's Landing in honor of the future heir to the throne, who, as viewers now know, only survived for a few hours after childbirth. During the tournament, Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, Eve Best, also known as the Queen Who Never Was, remarks to her husband Lord Corlys Velaryon, Steve Toussaint, that many of the men jousting and fighting with one another at the event have never actually seen real warfare. Because of this, they unleash all of their anger and violence on each other, with some even losing their lives in front of the crowds. And one particularly gruesome moment showing a knight having his face completely dismantled by an axe. The death of Oberyn Martell, Pedro Pascal on Game of Thrones, where he has his face smashed by the mountain, half-poor Julius Bjornsson, might have been shown on TV 8 years ago. But the parallels still feel too soon for us. At least it didn't have the same sound or the ear-piercing scream that followed. Small miracles, right? The birth. In a moment that's been described as a Red Wedding 2.0 and one of the most disturbing scenes fans have ever seen, Queen Aemon, Sion Brooke, is forced to undergo a C-section so that her baby can be delivered. The resulting blood loss causes her to die after she screams out to her husband to put a stop to what's happening. The decision to cut into her stomach was made by Viserys, when he was told by the Maester that he had to choose whether to go ahead with the procedure or leave the fate of his wife and the baby up to the gods. Ultimately, Viserys, Paddy Considine, agrees to the procedure. The level of unease is dialed up in increments, making it almost impossible to watch, but watch many did. Queen Aemma is dragged to the center of the bed with very little regard, harking back to Rhaenyra's earlier words. Here, you are surrounded by attendants all focused on the babe. Someone must attend you. However, there is no one to fight her corner now as the frightened and vulnerable queen pleads for them to stop, begging Viserys as she shrieks at the sight of the knife. No milk of the poppy can save her from what is to come, nor can the Viserys words, "I love you." Aemma is sliced open and gutted. The scene is most visceral as her open wounds expand under the blade of the knife. Rivers and rivers of blood pool out of her as Viserys holds her hand but looks away, unable to confront his choice. Several viewers have expressed how traumatized they felt watching the scene, with some warning that anyone who's experienced birth trauma in their life could find it triggering. Might be the most gruesome scene I've watched, one Twitter user shared. Just as bad for the scene as a whole is that the child doesn't survive, thus making the decision not just barbaric, but a death sentence for two beings instead of one. It is the intimate bond and the closeness that the king and queen have shared earlier that makes this all the more harrowing a scene. It is the fact that her pain, her fear, and ultimately her barbaric death was at the hands of someone she loved dearly who loved her back. Given the turn of events, it may have always been mother and child's destiny to die. But the way that the death unfolded could and should have been handled much more lovingly. Instead, Viserys put the kingdom and his legacy ahead of his wife. "That's the one thing that we can never quite come back from," said Considine in an exclusive interview with Digital Spy. Making a choice like that to choose the realm over the potential of his wife's survival? Otto's plan. Following Queen Aemma's death, the young lady Alicent Hightower, Emily Carey, is consoled by her father, Sir Otto Hightower, Rhys Ifans, given she also recently lost her mother. While at first, Otto appears to be focused on soothing his daughter and providing her with support, it quickly becomes apparent that he has an ulterior motive. The Hand of the King asks Alicent to pay the king a visit, saying that the monarch would appreciate her company. As Alicent goes to leave the room, her father suggests she wear one of her mother's old dresses, with fans drawing the conclusion that Otto is trying to pimp his own daughter to the king. "I know he didn't just pimp his daughter out to his boss who just lost his wife, and son ain't no way," one person tweeted, while another wrote, "Otto is so sick for pimping Alicent out to the grieving king. Madness." Yes, very much is madness, and yet it very much fits with the realm that Game of Thrones is set in. Don't forget that in Game of Thrones, it was Olenna Tyrell who got her granddaughter to woo Tommen in a very physical way to ensure that he wouldn't be able to resist marrying her, which is exactly what she did. Also, Tywin Lannister was never ever above using his children in order to secure alliances and deals that would help secure his house. Such as when he had Tyrion marry Sansa to help ensure control of the North, and planned to marry Cersei again to help keep the Tyrells in line. It is a part of the great game, and the game is terrifying. What's to come? That is the question, isn't it? Because Game of Thrones almost every single season had a moment, or 10, where fans couldn't help but shout out, "What the F?" Just to name a few is the Red Wedding, the events of the Purple Wedding, though many were happy Joffrey died, obviously, the Night Watch Rebellion, and the death of Lord Mormont, the various ways that dragons killed people in the show. Basically, the last few minutes of Hardhome where the White Walkers get their armies of the dead to grow even greater, the final battle between the Hound and the Mountain, and so on and so forth. Given that we haven't seen the dragons in action as much so far, you can bet that they'll have a few great moments to come. Plus, a lot of these people are freaking nuts, and as a result, they're going to do things that can't help but be brutal, barbaric, and quite frankly, unsettling. So, what do you think? What do you think of this look at the House of the Dragon and how the show had some really big moments that left fans and critics absolutely shocked and horrified? Were you mortified by these moments when they happened on screen? Do you think that we're just getting started and there's going to be even more stuff like this in the remainder of Season 1? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see you next time on the channel.